WWII soldiers learned that snow could save your life in ways that defy all logic. Breathing frozen air could kill you silently. But they discovered a deadly trick to fool enemy snipers using ice. What did they use to survive when cold meant certain death? During World War II, the freezing winters were just as dangerous as enemy soldiers. Both troops and regular people had to deal with snow-covered battlefields, frozen supply roads, and temperatures so cold they could kill someone in just a few hours. But from all that hardship came some really smart ways to survive. Most people today have never heard of these tricks. These weren't just quick fixes that people made up on the spot. They were real solutions that soldiers learned the hard way in muddy trenches, on icy roads, and in freezing cold houses where staying warm meant staying alive. Let me tell you about these almost forgotten winter tricks that helped people survive when the cold seemed impossible to beat. Out in the countryside of Europe and on the fighting lines in the east, soldiers and regular folks used flat stones heated by fires to make their own bed warmers. Before going to sleep, they would wrap these hot stones in cloth or put them inside metal containers so they wouldn't get burned. Then they tucked them under their blankets. These heated stones could keep someone warm for hours, stopping frostbite during those bitter, cold nights. Unlike the electric heating pads we have today, these stones didn't need any special fuel beyond the fire that was already burning. This was perfect when wood and coal were hard to come by. This next trick goes against what you might think makes sense. Soldiers learned from people who lived in really cold places like the Arctic that snow could actually keep you warm if you used it the right way. They would dig a shallow ditch or make a cave in the snow and line it with tree branches. This trapped their body heat and blocked the freezing wind from hitting them. German soldiers fighting in the east and resistance fighters in places like Norway used this trick when surprise snowstorms hit and their tents couldn't protect them. Good wool socks were really hard to find during the war. Russian soldiers and Finnish ski troops used something called footcloths instead. These were squares of thick fabric that they wrapped around their feet in a special way. When wrapped correctly, these cloths pulled moisture away from their feet, better than socks, and dried faster using just body heat. This stopped painful foot problems and frostbite during long walks across frozen ground. The best part was that soldiers could make new foot wraps from almost any piece of cloth they could find. In small, closed-off shelters like foxholes, underground hideouts, or secret bunkers, soldiers sometimes used a clever trick to make heat using tin cans and candles. They would fill a can with small rocks or sand, then put a little candle inside. The metal can and stones would soak up the heat and spread it around, giving them a small but life-saving boost in temperature. This method was quiet, didn't make much smoke, and was easy to carry around with their other gear. Since soldiers couldn't get the skin creams we use today, they would cover their exposed skin with a thin layer of cooking fat, motor oil, or even melted animal fat. This protective layer could slow down frostbite, reduce wind damage to their skin, and trap whatever body heat they had in places like their cheeks and hands. Sure, it probably didn't smell very good, but when you're in a blizzard, staying alive is way more important than smelling nice. When soldiers had to sleep on frozen or wet ground, they would gather up dry grass or straw to make a layer between themselves and the cold earth. Even just a few inches of this stuff could stop a lot of body heat from escaping into the ground. Allied soldiers in the French and Italian countryside, as well as regular people hiding in barn lofts, used this method when real bedding was something they could only dream about having. In freezing weather, fuel for cooking was just as valuable as the food itself. To save fuel, some troops used something called haybox cooking. This meant bringing a pot of stew to a boil, then taking it off the fire and burying it in hay or wrapping it in thick blankets. The trapped heat around the pot would keep cooking the food slowly without using any more fuel. This saved precious supplies that could be used for warmth instead. Here's a trick that hardly anyone wrote down, but soldiers on the Eastern Front sometimes used it. They would sprinkle a tiny bit of salt inside their boots to pull moisture out of their socks during the day. This kept their feet drier, which really helped prevent frostbite. The salt had to be used very carefully because too much could hurt their skin. But during a desperate march across frozen ground, this trick could mean keeping their toes instead of losing them to frostbite. In really cold weather, breathing in freezing air could hurt soldiers' lungs and make them cough. This was deadly when they needed to stay completely quiet. Soldiers would breathe through layers of wool or even a scarf stuffed with dry grass to warm up the air before it reached their lungs. This was especially important for ski troops and winter patrol soldiers in Norway, where the wind could make temperatures drop to deadly levels in just minutes. This last trick was less about staying comfortable and more about staying alive during battles. During winter, troops would fill their water bottles with hot water and keep them close to their bodies so they wouldn't freeze solid. But they also had a sneaky use for frozen water bottles. They would leave a separate bottle to freeze completely and place it where enemy snipers might aim. The way ice catches sunlight looked like a helmet or piece of equipment from far away. This fake target could give soldiers those crucial extra seconds they needed to move to safety or escape. The amazing thing about these tricks is how simple they were. They came from a time when people didn't have heated jackets, portable stoves, or special sleeping bags. They used whatever they could find around them, whether it was straw from a barn floor, a chunk of animal fat, or a flat stone from a river. They understood the basic ideas of keeping heat in, controlling moisture, and staying insulated. Many of these methods could still save lives today if someone got stuck in a survival situation, was living off the grid, or even during bad winter power outages. These winter survival tricks weren't just about putting up with the cold. They were about beating the cold by being smart and creative. They show us that being tough often comes from making small, simple changes to how we do things. These almost forgotten tricks from World War II remind us that people can figure out amazing solutions when they really need to survive.